This happened around Valentine's Day. At the time, I was married to my husband Tony for 24 years. We were high school sweethearts and got married after finishing college. We had 2 sons together, and for as long as I knew Tony, his best friend was this guy named David. As the years went by and friends came and went, Tony and David stayed in touch. That's when things started to get rough between me and Tony. Our honeymoon phase seemed to last forever, but then one day, something was burdening me about still being in the marriage. Unfortunately, by then, Tony had become worn out from life, buried in his work and either unable or unwilling to put in the effort to keep our marriage alive. This led to our first serious arguments in 30 years of being together, so I went to David. David was still friends with Tony, but at that time, they were more distant than they had ever been. Despite still being old friends with Tony, David understood my plight and helped me through it. He had similar issues in his marriage, so he easily related to me. I started to see David in secret, just to talk. Eventually, I realized I had truly fallen out of love with my husband. That's when I started sleeping with David. We both tried as hard as we could to hide our affair, but it was hopeless. We kept coming back to each other, and I would try to see him every other day. And every time I saw him, we got intimate and kept cheating on our significant others. After a few years, Tony started to notice. He started to snoop around and berate me with questions like, why was I really staying late at work or which friends I was going out with? Then one day, he got a hold of my texts with David and finally found out. Only I didn't know that until he followed me to David's house and confronted us on the street. What happened next between the two of them was, up until that point, the most violent and frightening state I had ever seen my husband in.
You rat bastard! This whole time you were screwing my wife! Stay back, let's just talk about this. There's nothing to talk about! You betrayed me! Both of you destroyed everything! It was already over, Tony. Don't you understand that?
Babe, please.
Shut it, bitch! You're the hoe that went and slept with my best friend! No wonder you're so damn loose down there! Ah!
A fight broke out. They were wailing on each other, punching and kicking and slamming. I tried to break them up, but the people on the street had to intervene. They both came away from the fight with bloody knuckles and bruised up faces. I didn't know what to do after. I defaulted on going home with my husband, but oh God, it was unbearably awkward. I felt like anything I said might set Tony off all over again. I knew he was furious with me and with David, but I couldn't put all the blame on him. When we got home, we told the kids to go to their rooms for the night. Then we finally sat down to have the discussion. At last, I admitted to Tony I wanted a divorce and that I wanted to marry David. Tony went into a rage and screamed in my face about how much of a horrible person I was for destroying our marriage. I didn't say much. I just let him tire himself out. However, every single day, he would blow up about something completely unrelated and bring it back to the affair. He didn't trust me to leave the house, so I stayed, mostly for the kids. I was in there until Valentine's Day rolled around. I knew for sure I didn't want to spend it at home, so I left to go see David for the first time in a while. There was nothing I could do to keep Tony from knowing where I went once he noticed I left, so I was hoping that he wouldn't do anything crazy. When I got there, I parked my car by the side of the road and was greeted by David, who emerged from his driveway. That's when I saw another car pulling up, and it was Tony. He got out of the car and revealed a firearm tucked in his waistband. I remember seeing David pleading with him, but all it did was cause what happened to happen.
You piece of shit! You took my wife! You ruined my Valentine's Day! You ruined my life! Ah!
David did not survive his injuries. Tony, however, somehow survived. Although the damage was severe, after he was sufficiently healed, he was arrested. I am alone, scared, wrecked with guilt and shame so debilitating I can hardly take care of my sons. When I look at them, all I can see is my husband's face, sometimes intact and sometimes mangled. This story was inspired by a disturbing incident regarding a woman at the center of a fatal Valentine's Day love triangle who had feared her husband would turn violent when she left him for her lover of 6 years. 46-year-old Kathy Riley told her friends that she was afraid of her husband. and that she feared he would do something to her or her longtime lover, David Glenn Nichols. She and estranged husband Tony Riley had been high school sweethearts, but had eventually separated after she told him she wanted to marry Nichols. The pair were still living in the same house in Golgong with their 2 teenage sons. On Wednesday at about 7 a.m., Riley followed his wife to Mr. Nichols' homes. Witnesses to the Valentine's Day slaying say Riley was armed and left off at his love rival. Witnesses to the Valentine's Day slaying say Riley was armed and led off at his love rival. He then did the unthinkable after an hour-long standoff with the police. Riley was taken to the hospital and survived. Riley has been remanded in custody and will be sentenced accordingly.